Hello. For those who don't know, I'm M. Hi. I'm a former clock main, now a 5x5 blindfolded main, and I hated clock, but I don't think it should be removed. I hated clock until the announcement, or until relatively soon after the announcement that they were removing it. I picked back up the event and realized that this is actually really good. We need to keep this. I have a lot of thoughts for this video, and I have a script. I probably won't be editing this because it will be very long, but I will try and keep coherent and not ramble as much as possible. If I have any other ideas, then I will just say them. They might be a bit unstructured, but they will be there. So, the board has decided, without consulting anyone except themselves, to remove clock as a WCA event and add FTO. According to Roman Wofford, who I would imagine has minimal incentive to lie about this, the board did not consult the competition events working group. The board has not refuted this or confirmed this or anything. It is literally the job of the CEWG to ensure event changes are done with structure and are in the interest of the community. The WCA not consulting them at all is disgraceful. This is a bit elitist, and I did actually do these calculations without accounting for Dan Smith, but the best average on the board is 9.40. The mean average from all board members is 13.43. The people on the board are on average 6 times slower than world record. As a 3x3 equivalent, it would be like if 3x3 was removed by a group of people who averaged 21.05 seconds. Except it's not actually like that, because 13-14 seconds on clock is a lot easier to get to than 21 seconds on 3x3. Their reasons for removing clock are absolutely horrible. Let's go through each decision, first in the post, then what people said, the board said at NAC, sorry. Disclaimer, this video will have some points that I made in my post on the WCA forum, and it will have some extra points. And some of the points will be further developed. Another disclaimer, everything's changing rapidly. Don't take what I say and think it can be used for tomorrow. A lot of it can, but a lot of it could change with one statement from the board. Also, another disclaimer, I have a duty of care. I'm not massive by any stretch of the imagination, but do not go and harass the board members. Don't insult them. It will not be effective. You need to deconstruct their points with logic, reasoning. Even deconstructing them with emotional reasons is better than just insulting them. Be strategic, be tactical, don't be an idiot, essentially. So, first reason in the original statement was votes. The board removed clock because it had 1,059 votes, saying it was one of the events that was, quote, most appropriate for reduction in status or removal. 1,059 votes in an event with 30,000 competitors is 3%. The WCA is bending over to 3%, and the number of clock competitors has probably gone up since the time I wrote this. I really hope I don't have to explain why the WCA listening to a 3% is a terrible idea. And even if we look at the people who voted even if we look only at the people who answered the survey, it's still only about a quarter who said it was appropriate for reduction in status or removal. A good chunk of them would have also been joke votes or directly answering the question in front of them, because the question was terrible. First off, the question did not indicate you could just pick nothing. You could, but it wasn't clear at all. They said in the question, I believe, you select a maximum of 3 events. Not up to 3 events, a maximum of 3 events. And it's not like it was a write anything you want poll. where you can just write NA. It was a tick box, and you could tick multiple, or you could tick none. But the difference between ticking one and ticking none was a little red star. A little red star. Just think about that for a second. A little red star probably did cause a greater number of votes for clock. It's a meme to like petition clock to be removed just because it's different. And this problem with communication is further exemplified because cubing has a very, very high number of neurodivergent people. They and also neurotypical people could have thought they had to pick something or pick three things. They probably might not have known that you could just pick nothing. Grayson James, literal world's finalist, voted for clock as a joke because they thought you had to pick three things. I'll be honest, I don't know if they're neurodivergent, and I wouldn't like to assume. But because they thought you had to pick three things, if they knew you could pick nothing, then I doubt they would have picked clock, considering world's finalist. This logic also follows for 7x7 and 5x5 blindfolded. Their votes are likely inflated from what they would otherwise be. I thought the board was meant to know cubers and know that a good chunk of the community would have issues with the question. It's dictatorship of the 3% or the 25% if you push it, not the majority. Nowhere near the majority. For a decision like this, I'd say a supermajority is needed, either of the community or of volunteers. WCA volunteers were not consulted. They only had the survey, but they were not consulted. We have enough space in the WCA for 18 events, and even more if we have a reduction in status, which I personally don't think is appropriate for any event, but that's something for another day. Even if we go by the popular vote, which the board seemed to love so much despite picking the second place option, Five Blind had more votes to be reduced in status or removed than clock did. This is not me arguing to remove Five Blind. I am a Five Blind main. I love a Five Blind, but you can't use the vote as a reason to remove an event when it's not the most voted event. Also, going by this popular vote that they seem to love so much, the board should add Team Blind and Killer Minx because they had more votes to be added than clock had to be reduced in status or removed. Also, alongside that, more people voted to remove no events than to remove clock or reduce it in status. Same with I'm pretty sure same with Five Blind and definitely same with 7x7. The board need to have consistent logic. Come on, it's the bare minimum. Okay. Reason 2, running clock at comps. The points made by the board for this reason make 0 sense at all. They say clock is difficult to scramble correctly. If you know how to count, you can scramble a clock. It's the same pin order every time. The pins that are up are really easy to figure out. One of the moves is all. I don't know how you would misinterpret that. Not only that, clock is the only commutative event in the WCA. You can do the moves out of order and the scramble will be the same. Scrambling it correctly is not hard. At least not... I was going to say not, at least not compared to other events. It's not hard, full stop. Just count. Even if you do miss-scramble, clock takes a few seconds to solve. Miss-scrambles aren't that big of a deal. Compare that to 4x4, 5x5, 5-blind, 4-blind, Mega Minx. They all have matching scrambles. They all have to match scrambles, but they're a lot harder to match. They take much longer to solve though, so miss-scrambles are a bigger issue, especially in something like a championship final where scrambles have to match. Even 16th seed Mega Minx at French Championships 2024, like, oh sorry, 2025, that's when the reg came into place. Like, you it's just poor logic. Okay, Megaminx is delegate discretion, but if the delegate doesn't discretion it, then yeah, sorry, DNF you, no fault of your own. And if they mean misscrambles, like transport misscrambles, like what happened at Worlds, this is just an issue of competent scramblers or competent runners. This is the delegate's job. This is the job of the delegate to have competent scramblers. It's a lot easier to have competent scramblers than potentially any other volunteer task, except maybe running. But if it happened in transit, then that's very likely to be the accident of the runner or something between the scrambling table and the competitor solving. I would say just allow misscrambles like these. They have very little impact on the solve, and if I'm honest, I think it should go for all events. I don't see how a single move is more fair to be DNF'd or replaced with a completely different scramble than a pretty similar scramble. We can change this regulation. We can change the regulation that requires exact scramble matching to allow likely transportation misscrambles or very minor misscrambles. We don't need to nuke an event of 30,000 people because of 30 degrees. That's incredibly insane. And if we compare it to other events like One-Handed or Pyraminx, One-Handed had a transport misscramble world record in a championship final. We're not removing One-Handed. Pyraminx, I've been told, is very likely to be misscrambled by a tip moving in transport. We're not removing Pyraminx. This is not me saying remove those events. This is me saying that clock. This is not a reason to remove clock. It's a terror. Like, sure, I can grant you that, okay, it might be slightly more prone to misscrambles, but one, Tetra Waffle essentially disproved that, and B, this is a problem with the regulations. The regulations aren't fair. Anthony Stoyek was rejected the ability to check his scrambles. This is a problem with regulation. Where was I? Okay. The board next say that clock remains highly prone to incidents. What incidents? Worlds, like we've already discussed, can be countered with a change in regulation. DNFs not being seen. We've already covered Worlds, but DNFs not being seen is already handled very well. The scrambler sees the misscramble, the scrambler sees the DNF, alerts the delegate tells them, hey, you've DNF'd this solve, and this can also be minimized by having competent judges. Competent judges are the responsibility of the delegate, again. So, yeah, get Cubers to judge. Do your judging assignments. We need, this is not something that is an issue with clock necessarily. This is a judging issue. Sure, it happens in clock only, but I've seen judges not spot my Megaminx +2s before, unless I say it. This is just an issue with judging. Reminder, after Worlds, people were angry at the WCA and the board for their decision. They were not angry at the event of clock. The board also say that clock has different procedures. What procedures? Most unique procedures were counted in the 2024 regs. There's no need for the fancy covers, but there is need for them in Square One. We're not removing Square One. Don't remove Square One, that's actually quite a fun event. The flip has already been covered. Remind judges to flip. This is, again, delegate responsibility. It's that easy, it's that simple. Even if even if we grant that clock has so many instances, that does not directly mean it should be removed. It does not mean however many instances does not mean screwing over a community of 30. I say 30,000, that's the total number of competitors, but it's still a large and ever-growing community. And all that work that even currently non-clockers have put into clock, all that wasted, how is that fair? How is that at all in the spirit of a community like organization? And okay, this would be a part where I would edit it out, but I cannot be bothered to edit, and I don't think the file will send to my computer, so it's staying in. The skills in clock are so incredibly different to other events. Like I have a sub 4 average in clock. I'm not sub 4 right now necessarily, but me getting sub 4 at clock did not help with essentially any other event. There's no other event where you do two things at once with each hand. This is the most unique event that the WCA has. Why are we removing it? The clockers have nowhere else to go. Sure, some clockers do square one, big cubes, FTO, megaminx. These are like quite often what I see like clockers do as well, and blinds and big blinds. Sure, some of them will have that, others won't. I know people who have quit cubing because there was no clock. Think about this board. You are just shooting yourself in the foot. There's fewer registration fees, fewer active community members. This is, sorry, I'm getting really emotional. I do think clock should remain in the WCA. The third reason was spectating. They say you can't see the state of a clock during a solve from a distance. So what? You can't see the state of any event from a distance, but okay. Maybe they mean the stage. Most people can see when a 3x3 is at last layer, and when I mean most people, I say most people who average under 15 or so seconds. I'm at very conservative guess, sub 12. I have a sub 10 official average. I don't know when even sub 7 solvers are at last layer, really. Even if I'm directly next to them on the judging station, I just can't tell. So cubing is not a spectator sport. But even if we grant that, okay, maybe everyone in the crowd is sub 10 and they know when a 3x3 is at last layer. Take that onto other events. You can't see when a 2x2 is at last layer. You can't see when a 2x2 solver is doing EG, or if they're doing LEG or TCLL or whatever. You can't see if a pyramid solver is doing L4E or ML4E because it's done in under 2 seconds. You can't see if a Scube solver is doing NS or EG. You can't really see a 7x7 solve because they're held under the table. Same with 6x6. 5x5 to an extent. FMC isn't a spectator event at all. 40 minutes of watching someone looking at Rubik's Cubes, memorizing them, is terrible for spectators. Do we remove 2x2, 6x6, 7x7, pyramid, cube, FMC, and multi because they're slightly bad for spectators? You can't really see what's happening? No, obviously not. You can't say that you can't see an event, therefore remove the event. Spectators don't really care what the cube looks like. I mean, maybe they might care about a fumble in someone they really want to win, or someone they really dislike, like maybe they're a bigot or something. But people don't really care what the cube state looks like, especially in a 2 to 4 second solve. Sometimes over, sometimes under, but usually at a high level 2 to 4, and even at national levels, it's still only about 3 to 5. No one is looking at the clock and seeing what each of the 7 moves are in the 5 seconds. Spectators care about the atmosphere of a round. Clock's high DNF rate, fast pace, and very large number of high-skill cubers mean that spectating clock is very, very intense and very, very fun. I was watching North American Championship. I'm not usually a spectator kind of person, but I watched clock, I watched 4x4, finals. I watched clock, I watched 4x4 finals, I watched 7x7 finals, clock finals, sorry, Scube finals, Megaminx finals, and 3x3 finals. If I'm honest, I think clock was the top one there. It's very close between clock and 7x7 just because I was so hoping that Kate Graham got her championship podium, and she did. Thank the Lord. Shout out Kate Graham, absolute amazing. Anyway, yeah, clock was amazing to spectate for me. You could see if a cuber messed up just through sheer vibes. I don't know how else to describe it, but you could tell when they messed up. And this probably goes for other events. You can see a lockup in a 2x2 solve, you can see a lockup in a pyramid solve, but if you lock up in one of those, yeah, the solve's dead anyway. And clock very, very, very rarely locks up. And if you've locked up in clock, you will just start crying or something like that. Where was I? Sorry, I'm reading my script again. Yeah, you can't tell me that the last minute snatch of world champion from Anthony, you can't tell me that the last minute snatch of world champion from Brendan to Anthony was less intense than Max Park's third 7x7 world champion title in a row. Same world champion for 7 years. This is nothing against Max. It's really impressive. But you cannot say clock is a bad spectator event when moments like that exist and are really frequent. Also, non-finals at large competitions are intense. I didn't watch the NAC stream for clock semis, but I've heard people say it was one of the, or if not the most intense, crazy spectating experience of the day. There were people DNFing, people throwing. Someone with a sub 2 also counted a 6. It's crazy. You will not see something of this caliber in any other event, at least not as frequently as in clock. Even if we accept that clock is a bad spectator event, so what? People still compete in clock. People main clock. People love clock. Competitors love clock. Clockers are cubers. You cannot be a spectator sport if there's nobody doing the sport. The WCA is a community organisation, entirely volunteer work. Clockers are cubers. I will not stop saying this. Clockers are cubers. The WCA, the World Cube Association, has to account for people who aren't spectators, the cubers. Spectators aren't paying to compete in worlds. Majority of spectator money in places like Continental Championship or World Championships are likely parents or family members who may not want to be there but have to be because their child might be young and cuber is still allowed at competitions. They're not going to be drawn into cubing by any event that isn't 3x3. In most cases, they're going to be drawn in through 3x3 one-handed or 3x3 blindfolded. Some people, notably Parker Traeger, also say that there are non-cubers, who follow cubing, and yeah, that is true. That does not mean the WCA should remove a whole community to account for them. The logic doesn't follow. The non-cubers also might follow cubing, see what the board has done with clock, see the outcry that they seem to be responding to very slowly, and think very poorly of the board and the WCA. And they might think poorly of cubing more broadly, and they may never compete in a WCA competition because of it. They might only compete in cubing contest competitions or cubing contest events. And not only that, clock is one of the easiest events in the WCA to learn. When people see clock, even if they don't think Rubik's Cube, they think, whoa, that's cool. And I've had this interaction several times. They think it's a game, but they think it's cool that that I can solve it without flipping, that I can solve it at all. Clock is one of the easiest, if not the easiest, if you struggle with notation or something, event to learn. So if you struggle with complexity, then you could learn clock. Complexity is a barrier to entry in cubing, and removing clock increases the barrier to entry into cubing. So great job, board. That's less money in reg fees. That's less eyes on cubing. You've shot yourself in the foot there. Okay. Reason number 4: clock is a unique event. Clock is different from the other events. Clock isn't Rubik-y, isn't cubey enough. What is this reason? This reason is absolutely terrible. The issues that they say stem from clock are really non-issues, and sorry, I've terribly phrased that. Let's try that again. They say the issues that are really non-issues from clock being different. Oh my god, I can't speak. I'll just read directly from the script. Clock is unique. Genuinely, what is the reason from this board? They say the issues that are really non-issues stem from clock being different to other events. Okay, so what if clock is different? These forced issues about clock are very, very easily fixable. The board says clock is highly dissimilar to other events / puzzles. How is this a problem? It reads as clock is different, so we're removing it. The logic does not follow. I will keep on saying this. Any of these reasons, the logic does not follow to the conclusion that clock should be removed. It really seems like they decided to remove the clock and then they came up with reasons after. The board says clock's recognition from the WCA stems from historic factors. Again, so what? I'm only a WCA competitor because of historic factors. Historic factors are everywhere. Don't remove them. Just because it's only in the WCA because of historical factors, because it was an original Rubik's product, does not mean removing it is the correct thing to do. It had a massive community behind it, and it now has theory, it has hardware competition. You've just removed the entirety of E-Star's revenue stream. You've removed most of ShengShao's revenue stream. They have some good releases recently, but they have competition. Qi does not in clock, really, and you've removed a lot of ShengShao's revenue stream. These are all issues that you forced onto the community by removing clock. People aren't buying clocks now. You have just increased Diane and Dian Cheng's and to an extent Qi's FTO sales, but you didn't have to remove clock to do that. Removing clock just because of how it joined the WCA, ignoring the number of people who have spent years developing clock methods, clock modding, etc., is just crazy. It makes no sense at all. Getting rid of an event of 30,000 people, the development, honestly, probably decades from the first thoughts of no flip to 7-time pseudo 7-time 7-time tilt, 7-time axial, other no flip and flip methods, other 7-time methods. Getting rid of all that because clock's a bit of a black sheep makes no sense at all. They then go on to say that removing clock strengthens the WCA's identity as being an organization for three-dimensional geometrical twisty puzzles and not other mechanical puzzles. The WCA's identity does not matter if the community is not listened to, if the community is broken, if it's split in two. Reducing a hobby down to a game of definitions is cruel for those who engage in the hobby, and it makes zero sense. Not only that, I would argue clock twists. I would argue it's a twisty puzzle. The twisty bits are on the inside, but they still twist. I believe it was Elijah Rain Phelps who I'm stealing this from, but leaving out some of the community opens the WCA up to competition. I will expand on this later on because it was a reason allegedly made by Abdullah Ghalab and Dan Smith, one of them, at NAC. It would be a bit bumpy, but we could all move over to cubing contests because they seem to care for us more than WCA. Okay, that's every announcement point covered. But at the end of the announcement, they talk about possible changes to 5-blind, 4-blind, 6x6, 7x7. As I've said multiple times throughout this, I'm a 5-blind main. I'm a former clock main. This terrifies me. Should a good chunk of the time I've spent put into cubing the past year and a half, should it all go to waste? Maybe even 2 years. Should it all go to waste? Do we want to make the Kiddie Events Association removing 5-blind, 4-blind, 6x6, 7x7? Those are a lot of the older person events. You're removing clocks. That's a kiddie event as well, but 3x3, 2x2, 4x4, pairing cube, one-handed, they're all essentially kiddie events. We have a few non-kiddie events in there, but we need more non-kiddie events. The average age of cubers, well, yes, a lot of young cubers are joining. The older people, like me, aren't going anywhere. I say I'm old, I'm 16, but we aren't going anywhere. We are still cubers, and I believe this is evident in the difference between Bustley and Norris's survey of cubers at some point. I assume they're still getting older, even if by a smaller margin. Okay. Where was I? Let's see. Okay, I was here. That's all for the announcement. Let's go through more information about clocks removal that has been allegedly been made by Abdullah Ghalab and Dan Smith at NAC. So, I would like to say that the final point is based off interpretations of Abdullah's most recent statement, is not as real, but I would still like to go through it anyway because he hasn't explicitly said it is not true. So, first point, the board wants to take cubing in a similar direction to chess, bringing up the Olympics and saying they want to take cubing in that direction. Board, let's be honest here, cubing taking itself so seriously is not what cubing is about. Cubing is about having fun, it's about seeing and making friends. For the majority of people, it's something fun we like to compete in sometimes. For a lot of people, we go to comps to see our friends. Not all of us want to win. And it's fun to compete because the WCA, to an extent, treats slower cubers and faster cubers basically equally. Being so serious about our hobby will take the fun out of it. Beyond this, why do we need to take cubing in that direction anyway? Any potential positive outcome from this movement of cubing will be outweighed by the removal of such a large, growing community and even a former community. I'm really sad that they're removing clock. Did we have to remove clock for cubing to be taken seriously? We were never going to be taken seriously. We turn plastic toys. You want to be taken seriously while turning plastic toys. Should cubing be taken seriously at all? We do this for fun. Removing the fun will ruin the hobby. And again, it opens up space to your side for a rival company, which is the next point. The board says that a monopoly of organisation in sport is good. I can understand this, having multiple organisations would be a bit hectic, but this is only true insofar as the organisation listens to the community it should serve and takes in the feedback. Otherwise, the sport just dies competitively. Not only this, the removal of clock has created an opening for a competitor organisation to take in clock refugees. So they have just shot themselves in the foot. if cubing contests were to say, hey, we're now hosting our own independent competitions with WCA events and also clock and other non-WCA events, that might be, more desirable. If there is if there is only one organization, it should seek to serve out the community first. Competitors are what the WCA need to stay alive. If we all move to a different organization that actually listens to us, the WCA will fail, no matter how official it seems. 3. The board mentions how Cubing is getting more and more big name sponsors, and how clock being removed is a part of Cubing getting more sponsors. Why is the board bending over to sponsors that clearly have no interest in the community? Because sponsors that would have interest in the community would not require you having to remove clock to get them. No serious company is saying, hey, we would like to sponsor Cubing, but you see clock? Yeah, no, we're not sponsoring if you don't get rid of that. No company is doing that, and I am very confident that Cubers don't want a company who doesn't care about them. The WCA was made for the Cubing community. It should serve the Cubers first and other people second, third. We can find alternate sponsors for larger competitions that don't involve removing clock as an event. We don't want corporations that have no interest in the community. This honestly just seems like the WCA board are happy to stab the Cubing community in the back if it means they can get some of that lovely, lovely sponsorship money. This is satirical. Do not think that sponsorship money is good if it means us, the Cubing community, are stabbed in the back. Okay, next point. The board said that something also needs to be done about events like FMC and Big Blind, whether that's tiering or removal. Removing even more events for the sake of spectators and sponsors would, 1, open the WTA up to even more competition, something they want to avoid clearly, and 2, demonstrates the WCA does not care about anyone who doesn't main a, quote, acceptable event. Even tiering the events would be making it seem like these competitors are feeling othered, as if they're not good enough for the event they want to do. 5. This isn't necessarily to do with clock, but they discussed the possibility that the WCA would only organise large competitions like championships, and a local competition would be unofficial. Open brackets, not as the path they're heading down, but as something that could happen. Close brackets. Okay, local comps becoming unofficial would be wildly disappointing. There would likely be a massive drop-off in registration numbers, which means less money to spend on things like, which means less money for the WCA to spend on things it hosts, like majors. People would probably just turn up to comps to see their friends, and because it's not official, they wouldn't pay reg fees to compete in comps. If they mean something like regional organizations having more power and there's less micromanaging at the top of the WCA, then that's in most cases fine if the regional organization is able to listen to the community. Sorry, where was I in my script? Sorry, give me a sec. Okay, I think I found where I was. The decision would, give room for a rival organization to take competitors. If it wasn't already clear, in response to this, if this is not overturned, I want a rival organization set up, one that listens to Cubers. I don't know who's going to be setting it up. I'm just 16. I can't set it up. Someone else likely can. We are a bunch of unemployed people who turn plastic. We have time and we have a community. We have at least the clockers. Okay, 6th reason. The board says the decision has been in the works for a while and they would have liked to do it earlier, but other big matters came up. So if it's been in the works for a while, then they've had to have seen the meteoric growth of clock, the developments in hardware, the methods, the company competition. Euro 2022 clock competitor numbers was 122. 2 years later, that had quadrupled in 2 years, with only approximately 2 times increase in total competitor numbers of the competition. What sensible group of 5 people sees this and thinks, yeah, let's remove this ever-growing unique event with more and more time being spent into developing the event? Makes absolutely zero sense at all. And okay, this is the final point. This is the thing I warned about. This point is likely not true, but Abdullah hasn't necessarily denied it, and I would, for the sake of completeness, would like to say it in case it is actually true, just due to the lack of an explicit denial. So 7, and finally, most egregiously, the board says the real reason to remove clock is confidential, and the publicly posted reasons are supplemental. First off, not being transparent, saying you have, not being transparent enough to say you have confidential reasons in the original post is a massive betrayal of trust. They say that the confidential reasons in the post are not necessarily, they say that where the hell was I? Saying that they have, quote, confidential reasons in the original post, without even necessarily naming them, would have been at least somewhat transparent. If maybe a bit annoying if we don't know the reasons. Them not saying that they have confidential reasons is, in the first place, feels like a massive backstab when they give us other supplemental bullcrap reasons. Even beyond this, what good confidential reason could they have for removing clock? The only plausibly, confidential reason, remotely plausible, is sponsor money. But again, we do not want the sponsor money of a company that doesn't care about cubers and doesn't care about the cubing community. It just seems like WCA are willing to betray their community for the potential of a bit of money, for the potential of a bit of sponsorship money. The confidential reason could be confidential, or it could be something that the board just wants to hide for some reason. Maybe it could be sponsorship money. It could be that the board just wants to increase their sum of ranks. Without disclosure, we will never know. If they can't be transparent with the reason, then we don't know why the WCA is removing clockers, and non-clockers alike will remain angry at the board for the lack of transparency and taking away years, potentially decades of hard work for something that we, the community, see as no real reason. Okay, that's the point from the board covered, or the speculative / misheard / misinterpreted reasons covered. Let's go through some extra points made by other people that aren't necessarily made by the WCA board. So, reason number 1, time at championships. If clock is causing your championships to run behind, then that's a massive organizational skill issue. It's a short event. You can hold fewer rounds of events that aren't as volatile as clock. Holding 2 rounds of 7x7 and 6x6 won't mean that the world champion won't qualify. That's not like clock. Caleb Wolf-Dunn, the person who inspired me to get sub 4 at clock, won World Round 1 in clock, but did not make finals. This won't happen for 7x7, it won't happen for 6x6. If anything, it's more likely that the world champion won't qualify if there is a round cutoff, or if they DNF their second round average, which they wouldn't have DNF'd if it was first round. Why are we holding 3 rounds of 6x6 and 7x7 if timings are so tight that clock just tips the balance? We're also holding both FTO and clock at Worlds 2027, so there is room for both. We also had championships with clock and feet. That's 18 events. Feet requires a change in the setup, or a different setup. FTO does not. There will be enough time in championships for 18 events, and if there is not, give blinds and FMC their own championships. We do it in the UK, and I'm a blinder, and I know that, well, yes, this is slightly annoying, it's fine. I mean, it also gives the chance for, quote, up-and-comers to compete when they maybe couldn't have. When I registered for UK Championship blindfolded, I did not have a 4-blind, a 5-blind, or a multi-blind, and I now have a 4-blind, but I still wouldn't have qualified if it was the same as last year. So, yeah, we can give other events their own championship. Other reason number 2, clock doesn't have colours. So what? That doesn't mean remove it. This is the same as the point of clock being different to other events. It means nothing in terms of clock removal if clock is different. Different doesn't mean bad. If anything, different is good. It's uniqueness. We need a unique skill set. Different doesn't mean remove the event. Is that what I wrote down? I mean, yeah, I still believe it. Okay. Final reason 3, clock caused issues at Worlds, and yeah, no, that's just the fault of the board and the regulations. If the board had thought about what is fair and not been such a stickler for the regulations, people would be a lot happier. People weren't angry at clock, people were angry at the WCA board and their decision to screw over Anthony for something out of his control. He could not check scrambles, even if he tried. Removing clock to respond to the issues at Worlds or other potential issues is cowardly, if I'm honest, and it totally disregards the community of cubers that have put so much work into clock, and it's all just been taken away from them by a group of 5 people who did not discuss the competition events working group, didn't really discuss any volunteers, and did not discuss any top cubers. Not really. Only the event survey, and that was incredibly unclear. Okay, I'd like to say that FTO being added is a good thing, and it hopefully makes the WCA better and people have fun doing FTO. I've been told it's like triangular 4x4, but if people have fun doing it, so what? Add it to the WCA. I have friends who only have fun cubing when it's FTO. Seeing that the WCA now accounts for them and recognizes them is absolutely amazing. But the addition of FTO at the same time as clock is very plainly an attempt by the board to make the decision seem more popular. It's sly, it's disingenuous, and I hate it. FTO will be known as the event that killed clock, a title it will be marred with for years, decades, potentially forever, and it won't go away. No other event has that title. Clock is an event that needs to be held in WCA for the historic factors, yes, but also for the community that it has built up, and the theory, the years of work. It needs to stay to bring in more people into the WCA. More competitors is more fun. Cubing is a hobby we do for fun. If you don't have fun with clock, then don't do clock. Don't scramble it. You might want to run it, you might find running fun. I don't do FTO, I have fun running FTO. Hell, I have fun doing clock, and even when I didn't like the event, I still had quite a bit of fun doing it. I have fun with most events, honestly, but clock is still fun, and I can see why people find it fun. It's very unique, it's very different. Should a board that's so inexperienced with clock, remember, 6 times worse than the best in the world, be able to take away the fun for so many people? Obviously not. That's a terrible abuse of power. Now, I stated at the start, Oliver Hexter did release... This is me directly reading from the script. I didn't actually say this, but Oliver Hexter did release a statement acknowledging the pushback, saying they've read every single one of them. At the time, it was 300 forum posts, countless YouTube videos like this one, and however many emails. I hope they have, and I'm not going to call them liars, obviously. But they say they empathise, but they won't be making any firm decisions, which is a bit... You see the outrage, you see the problems. But even if they empathise, this is for the community. If anybody is listening to this, this empathising with the community does not mean get sloppy with your outrage. It does not mean to go easy on the board with your reasoning. Do not stop until clock is reinstated. The board has realized that they have made a massive mistake. Silence is complicity in the WCA's actions. Speak up, make your voice heard, let them know this is unacceptable. Shout save clock until they can't ignore us anymore. That van, that lorry, that truck with save clock on it, exactly what I want to see. The clock podium with everyone on first and the save clock show. Again, exactly what I want to see. Sorry. I have a duty of care here. Again, don't go harassing the board members. Don't insult them. Deconstruct them with logic, reasoning, even emotion. That's a lot more of a useful use of time than insulting. Right. Our hobby should not be decided by 5 people. Our hobby should not be decided by 3%. Our hobby should not be decided by 25%. Turn back the clock. Save clock. Turn back the clock. We need this. We need to save clock.